All right, I'll say it anyway. It's 7:07. This is May 5th, 2023. This is the St. Mark Street Park Working Group. And the meeting called to order, and present we have Grant Farrington, William Sines, James Nicholas Worley, Marguerite Landry, Kevin Miller, and Andrew Dennington. All right. First order of business is review and approve the minutes, March 6th, 2023. Do I have any additions or corrections?
One big correction we need to make is that we did not approve minutes from 2022 at our last meeting. We approved minutes from earlier this year in 2023. So that's
Okay. All right, so it's 2023 for all the minute approvals.
Were the February 13th minutes tabled?
it's a good question.
So if not, we'll also go on them today.
I think
Because
they're
on our
posted.
website,
Yeah.
the minutes for February
I'll see the minutes for 2
13th,
seconds.
Sure.
There.
oh, I see what it is. We approved the minutes for February 13th.
So it should
I
be
think-
January
It
18,
says that- it says the
2023.
posting date on the top right.
It says received, which
Yeah.
It's-
All right, so there's one way to do that. Just go on the town website and look. All right.
yes, it says the ones from February 13th were received.
There
So
it
we
is.
must have.
Yep.
Then when did we approve them at our last meeting?
Didn't you miss one meeting?
Did I miss one meeting?
It was a long time ago, though. Oh, they may be in the minutes that I did. I did one set of minutes, and that was, I think, a long time ago.
Says
We're all
you
caught up.
Received by Kate Battles March 15th.
Yep.
So we should remove that from our minutes. Right.
Okay, so we have amended on the minutes for tonight, which is March 6th, that we're okaying. We approved the minutes of January 18, 2023.
Yep.
Okay, so that's done. They're in, they're posted. So tonight we're just doing the meeting minutes for March 6th,
Yes.
2023. Any emendations or corrections, except for the 22 is really a 23. Anything else?
Page 2,
Yes.
All right,
David Perry, P-A-R-R-Y.
That is my apologies to Mr. Perry.
all right. Any others? Okay, so we have a motion to accept as amended.
So moved.
All right, that is Andrew, and I have a second.
Second.
All right, that is Bill. All right, all those in favor? Do we have to do a roll
Yeah.
call for? All right, Grant,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
aye.
Miller's eye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good. All right, so the first and only major order of business right now is to review and approve the VHB final design for the park.
Can you speak up a bit, Marguerite?
Can I speak up a bit?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. To review and approve the VHB engineering plan for the park design, which we received dated May 2nd, 2023. There'll be a discussion and also a vote. All right. Anyone like to speak to these?
Yeah, I have a number of items. Someone's gonna have to mute, because I got my mic open.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute. Hang on. Yeah. All right, go for it.
Okay, still got an echo.
Okay, we should be good.
All right, several points, and I'll start with something that I think is a helpful and useful addition to this plan, and that is, you know, the newly recognized South Roll Center Historic District. That the Historical Commission received some ARPA funding for signs, very nice bronze, 500-year plus lifespan signs marking the 7 entry points to the district. One of which is at the intersection of Marlborough Road and St. Mark Street. And at the time that we were planning this, of course, the status of the road relocation or whether that was actually going to occur was in flux. But because the district encompasses properties along St. Mark Street and Marlborough Road, rather than have like two signs, we were, if the change had not been approved, the land swap had not been approved and the road had stayed in place, it would have had to gone way up where St. Mark's currently now street sort of, takes a right off of southbound Marlborough Road. But now, with the road approved and the relocation planned, where it needs to rightfully go is at the intersection of the new or the relocated St. Mark's Road and Marlborough Road.
Mhm.
And, you could put it as you come south on Marlborough Road, it could come right before the turning, which would basically put it kind of on the public right of way adjacent to this, what the land that St. Mark's is going to use for a parking lot.
So basically right here.
Right, just above just above the park, or you could put it in the extreme, right at the turning, at the extreme, what is really the northeast corner of the park, right, where there's this one walkway, and put it, I'm sorry we don't have a screen up, but basically, where the planned walkway sort of empties out into the sidewalk that runs along Marlborough Road, you would put it, right at the top there. And I actually think this would be, it's a really kind of lovely, would be a lovely way to sort of enter Southborough from that, coming down from Marlborough on Marlborough Road. What you would see therefore is the sign, and we've got a nice mock-up that's at home in my office, but they're 24 by 30, so pretty substantial. And we went large because they want them to be seen as people drive down the road, and that's pretty big. And on a very attractive black pole, the vendor was very important to us. They would give us a nice looking pole. And so what you'll see, hopefully coming south on Marlborough Road, is a very nice green space, flowers, bushes, shrubs, the plazas, and right at the head of it, that sign. So, it could, go outside the bounds of the park or just inside. I think it makes sense as you come down, if this is sidewalk, to have it, just inside the boundary or something like that. So it would give a very nice sense of you've arrived someplace. Here's a historic district and here's a park, So that's a nice feature. I just wanted to note that. I've been waiting, I've been punting the discussion of the various spots for these signs and the placement and working out with neighbors and whatnot, in anticipation of a new DPW head, coming in, because that's the person I would presume it would be dealing with. But I just wanted to note that I think that's a nice feature for the park. So that's that.
I think it's great. You
yeah.
want it on the north side or the south side of the street?
Well, it would, as you head south, so it would be on the west side of, in the park, and it will be facing drivers as they head south on Marlborough Road toward the center.
Sounds great.
Yeah, Phil.
Quick question, is this designed for viewing only by particular traffic, or are people going to walk up and read?
Well, I think the nice thing is, it simply says Southborough Center Historic District, if I can remember the wording right, placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the U.S. Department of Interior, or something like that, and it shows the town seal. So it's not chock-a-block like with information about, for instance, the history of the town. It's meant, it's something that pedestrians coming along the sidewalk, if you came down Marlborough Road, either pedestrians or vehicular traffic would notice, quite prominently. So.
Has any provision been made for those people who are visually impaired?
No, how do you do that?
even in this building, there's rail. and-
Well, I mean, yeah, well, I suppose something could be attached to the pole itself. It was intended, principally on the roads to, obviously for people to, you know how we've got, in some parts of town, some of those date back to that were put up during the Depression,
Right.
those aluminum signs that,
The big one.
yeah, the big,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's something, they're similar to that, but these are bronze. But I mean, that's a kind of lovely thought, if there could be some provision or addition made along the pole.
Check out a QR code.
Yeah,
Is it, are the
Yeah.
signs similar to the one that's on the corner of Deerfoot by the,
The
Very nice.
Henry
well,
Knox.
that's, yeah, that one at Deerfoot is one of those 1930s era. They're cast aluminum, I believe.
that's like the same idea, a big old.
Roughly
sign.
the same idea, yeah, but doesn't tell a big story. It's meant as a marker, and these are pretty typical in historic districts around the country, that they have meant to attract the notice of the driver principally, to be quite honest.
But to Bill's point of
It is
view,
large print as well, right?
yeah,
Yeah, they are quite,
Like if you're walking by it, it would. You'd be able to.
yeah, I mean, some of those,
Well, the side of the print.
right, if you're,
Yeah.
Yeah. well, it's an interesting point. It's something we can investigate as, a possible addition.
because there might be, with Universal Design, they use QR.
You said the historic commission was in charge of that
Yes.
sign. That's very good.
Yeah,
So that's that. The other item, I have a couple items. A big one here now, going into stuff that's a little more thorny, is this was covered in the select board, planning board joint meeting a couple nights ago, but there was 100 feet of stone wall that was removed as part of the clearing, let's say, of this site. And my understanding that there was an intention to replace it. On these plans that we have, there are no stone walls shown at all.
Andrew has news. for
Well,
all of us.
So I asked Greg, Marguerite and I called Greg Russell earlier this afternoon and asked him that question. He again reiterated, yes, that you're gonna take the stones that were there before and reconstruct the stone walls. Like here, okay?
Yeah.
And
Where?
On
one
the,
there.
Okay.
Yeah. And that he said that in the original 2021 plans, the first version, that was shown there.
Yeah.
But so he said they're going to do it, and it is in those other sets of plans, but if you want, we can also just go back to him and say, I mean, would it help if it was depicted here too?
Well, a couple of questions I have about this is, first of all, I think it should span the entire perimeter of the park.
But it wasn't that way originally. was it?
No, it wasn't. And the original stone wall that was there was quite low. Let's
Yeah.
stipulate that, very low. And for the record, the stone wall that surrounds the old burial ground is roughly 30 inches high. That is a substantial and beefy wall. I don't know what's possible. There's a big pile of rocks there. I was walking the site once again this afternoon. I know that is very, very expensive. I don't know if we can encompass the whole of it with, breaks for the 2 entry points and the walkways, well, the 3 entry points, one down at the library. I don't know. I am a strong advocate, and we discussed this on the Historical Commission last meeting, and the Historical Commission is very, very strongly pro stone wall in some form or fashion around. I think it gives a sense of place, a sense of moment. I would note I was down at the Corderville Park again today, also the one at the intersection of Corderville and Southville Road. That park is sort of has demarcation, one area surrounded by a very low stone wall, and the rest of the park with those they're steel sort of, I don't know what you call them, semicircular kind of rings that have been allowed to sort of weather into a nice rusty
talking about.
patina. They have actually planters integrated in them, and they give a sense. That's a very similar location because it's surrounded on multiple sides by traffic. But it gives a sense of a little bit of a room, some protection from said traffic, some sense of place and moment. What I fear, if we don't get adequate surrounding either stone wall, I have one other thing to add to this, that I'm afraid that it's going to feel a little bit almost, especially with a lot of traffic going by, a little bit too traffic and a little scary, a little,
Yeah.
I don't want people to feel
So
vulnerable.
These are good points, and I want to say just what I remember Greg saying to both of us today. In the original, this piece of that's going out to bid does not include the walls. The original walls were part of the earlier one. and
Right.
It's a different set of contracts. The other part was the huge amount of old roadway that didn't have a stone wall because it was a road is now going to have a stone wall.
Right.
Right. So the plan was always to use the old stone wall stones that are in the boulder stack.
Right.
The boulder stacking, right?
Mm.
With all those things, take those out and reuse those so that this will be partly, they'll be antique stones, well, and they'll be weathered, and also they'll be the same stones. It'll be cheaper than bringing in something new that's yellow sandstone. It would be the same.
Right. I'd love to see the stones that are in situ sort of brought in. I just
Yes.
don't know if there's enough, how high that wall
Right.
will, how high, how thick. It's got to be fairly thick. The higher it gets, the thicker it has to be. Otherwise it gets knocked
Right.
over.
Now,
Whether it's going to be loose stack, whether it's going to be similar.
drywall, yeah,
Well, for instance,
Right.
you've got stone walls that were erected by the town around One Quarterville Road and the Southborough Community House. And those are appallingly constructed walls that aren't going to last very long, even though
did
they're
not
attractive.
see.
Yeah, they're bad. The other thing I would throw out there, I just want to, while I have the floor for a second, is
Yeah.
along Common Street, from one end at Main Street to the other, up the arch of Common Street and back down in front of the townhouse, there is what I regard as, despite the poor state of repair it's presently in, which was somewhat pursuant to the sidewalk work that kind of wasn't completed, we have a very attractive fencing along the town common. And that consists of granite posts that appear every 10 feet on center, surmounted by an iron sort of cap,
Yeah.
and then a rail. It's like an iron rail. It harkens back to the days of stone walls that had the notches in them for sheet pen. You'd put a pole on top of it, the whole sheet. Some of those stone walls can still be found sporadically here and there. I regard that in good repair as really attractive. And given the fact that this is such a huge expanse, it's really big and really, really expensive. It may be that the proper or an interesting solution would be to use all the available stones and to put back just as much stone wall as was promised. But in areas where we run out, this I think would be a good deal cheaper per linear foot. So you might have some combination which would kind of tie visually together the OBG surrounded by a very nice 30-inch stone wall. Incidentally, the combined height of the granite posts surmounted by rails that surround the town green is also 30 inches. That's a standard height. So you could do a combination of stone wall, granite posts, poles, and have something that would, in my mind, draw it together between the OBG and the town green and be cohesive and cheaper.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Because I've been thinking along these same lines, so because for the select board kind of cycle, right? Earlier this week was the last meeting of the current board. There'll be a new board set, and then like last year. We had a goal setting meeting in July. So one idea I've had for a goal for the select board project is a project that would do the things that you're talking about. So things you could do is, for example, the sign. You know, I've seen the font you have for that. You had a series of signs that kind of match that same font. And then, you know, for a marker for this is the blank name of the park. Another thing we had was in the charge was to come up with a name for the park. We could do that as well. And then, you know, the pipe, for lack of black colored
Yep.
pipe that, you know, you consider taking that out, making some, because it's bent at places, making it more attractive.
Right.
And instead of doing them as little separate projects, doing it all together so a way where it's all kind of some unified design elements.
Right, well, a restoration of the fencing, and again, I'm going beyond our scope now. The
Yeah.
restoration of that fencing that surrounds the town green, which in some cases actually busted right out of the granite
Yeah.
post. Some places disconnected in one spot in particular, right in front of the townhouse down at the bottom at Main Street. It's completely gone. There are two of the posts that got destroyed during the sidewalk work and were never replaced. Yeah, a unified bid to repair and replace that and to put some around here
Yes.
might make sense. I just hope we don't kick that can down the road.
So
I think
the
this
thing
is-
I'm conscious of though is that the $250,000.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know.
what Kevin just brought up, which is so good, is gonna be our phase B.
Yeah.
Because phase A is the 250 to get this in, and then the next part is gonna be fencing around
What
there.
do you mean phase B?
We can't-
We're designing the park right now.
No, we are deciding on the park right now for the under 250. And this is the design that was drawn. It does not include stone walls or granite walls of any kind. It cannot. It's over.
There's also a way you can, maybe not to get it too complicated, but
Yep.
you can also, you create a bid where there's a alternate, you know, you say, this is what you have to do, and this is another optional thing, if you think you can do that and
Right.
fit it. I just don't know whether if you absolutely insist on doing that in this
Iteration.
contract, that it exceeds the $250,000.
Okay, so this-
You could get Greg's recommendation on that.
But I heard two different things here. One is that the stone wall is included in plans, in 2021 plans, and it's gonna get built.
Mhm.
And now I'm hearing the stone wall is an optional
No. This
addition.
this
that will
thing
not
right
be
here.
included.
This thing right here was never a stone wall. Right up around the top, that's never been a stone wall. That's new.
I
that's
just
an
don't know how
add-in.
far it goes, that's all.
Well, wait,
So, wait, if I
You
may.
understand
Can-
what I'm saying? New street and continue a replacement stone wall all the way up past through where the old street entrance was. Does that make sense to you? And that this right here was never a stone wall, and this will be a new element added in, basically.
So,
What was in the old plan?
yeah, we haven't seen,
This was never anything.
Okay, but what was in the old plan was along 85, is that what you're saying?
You mean the 2021 plan?
We were referring to, 2030,
Right here.
along 85.
but right now there's no, the thing we're looking at right now in front of us does not have a wall put in for this bid project.
Correct.
Okay.
No,
So-
along 85 it does, but not along the arc of the new road.
No, not along 85.
Hey, wait a minute.
so
Wait.
last,
Clarification.
No,
last,
what we have here is, he said right here, and you can sort of see, they're putting stone wall back all along here.
Oh,
But this has, but that's what he said, but that is a separate project. It has nothing to do with us. It was the original, I'll read to you what he said on the phone today. The stone wall will be reconstructed on the west side, and the old St. Mark Street that is getting closed will have stone wall. All the replaced stone walls, shown on the reset, I don't know what that is. Anyway, the antique stones will be used in the original docks were in the Perkins thingy in 2021. It's on the town website in the DPW section.
when you say west side, is this west side of 85?
right here, west side of 85, right
So there
there.
is a stone wall there currently.
Well, for part
If
of
you
it.
drive by it right now.
Yeah, but he's talking up here. He's talking above the park.
So
Sorry.
along St. Mark's parking.
I've been trying to speak.
Market parking lot.
I've been trying to-
Agreed.
I've been trying to speak for a few minutes here, but
All right,
last night, the select board voted, and I went back today. I was there on Tuesday, and I also went back today and looked at the exact language of what the vote was. The vote was that both the select board and the planning board voted to do this, was to restore the 11 trees that had been cut down and to restore at least the length of stone wall that had been removed
mhm,
into the park design. That was the motion, and it passed unanimously.
right.
So we have a mandate, and actually we have a requirement now that the select board voted for it to include the stone wall in these plans, and they're not here.
No, did they say that it had to be included in these plans?
Well, we're voting on you expect the final vote tonight.
No, on this park, without, the stone walls are not included in these plans. The
That's a
stone
problem.
walls are gonna happen, but they're not included in these plans because what's going out to bid here does not include the stone walls because the previous contractor is dealing with the stone walls. The previous contractor is dealing with the stone walls. The park is going out to bid to be built by somebody else. The stone walls are being handled by the person who did the Main Street project, the entity that did the Main Street project. Does that make sense to
The stone
you?
walls that were removed were not on the main street, they were on St. Mark's Street for it, which is within the.
Yeah, but the
area
Main
which we
Street,
are
the Main Street
contracting.
project,
On St. Mark Street?
Yes.
What?
Can I ask just a,
Well, this is
what might be clarifying question?
yes.
2017.
The stone walls that are to be built under some other contract, are any part of them going to be within the confines of the park?
No,
No. So they're actually all gonna be to the north of St. Mark's.
they're
Street.
gonna edge the park. They're gonna be near the sidewalks.
So I have the video up right now. If you want me to play it, I can show you what the select board voted on.
Sure, if you want to, go ahead.
Well, wait.
Okay, all right.
So Grant, so we need to put walls back on this parcel, right?
That's my understanding, at least the length of what was there, which had been thrown around that had been 100 feet. I don't know
Can
if it's true or not, but
we, so from what I think is the select board is going to do that in addition to this plan. As in they're contracting it separately.
that's not my understanding.
No, that was my
How would you
understanding.
characterize it?
There was a,
There was a discussion last night or on Tuesday, sorry, not last night, in which the select board, again, the plans had just come in earlier that evening. Kathy Cook kind of looked to me in the audience and looked to Andrew, both of which, the plans had come about 2 hours before the meeting and we hadn't reviewed them, and asked us, and then later stated that the stone wall was in the plans, which, as it turns out, is not true.
It's in the plans, but it's not in the park part that we are voting on tonight. Go ahead, Andrew.
so there was,
Where's my phone?
going back to 2021, right? Where
Yes.
there was a Cornerville Road project, the intersection of Flag and Deerfoot, and then this project that all went in one bid packet, a whole bunch of plans that reflected all of that. Then, after things went sideways with this, there was a change order that removed from the contract the above ground work for what the park looks like. So that didn't, but there's still, it didn't remove the work to, put on the sidewalks, relocate St. Mark's Street and pave that, and there's different plans that show that are still valid, and E.H. Perkins is gonna come back and do that same work. And it makes sense to do that work and then the above ground work for the park all at the same time. So I think what Greg was saying, that if you look at the plans, which I have not gone and looked at them again, for that, road work, it does show stone walls there. Now, I don't know the exact length of it, but the reason why there's only 6 or 8 sheets in this is because it's just putting back in the above ground, like grading and paths work that was taken out before. So, I mean, one of the things we could do is, because we're meeting on a Friday night, I don't really feel like bothering Greg or with a question like this. We could just go back and ask him, and then if we had like a list of, these are the last kind of questions we have, we could then see if we have a really short meeting
Well,
next week to try.
I'm just gonna say, based on what Greg said, this is the time schedule we're dealing with. All right, this is going to bid outside of, Perkins. All right, and it needs to go within a certain amount of time because the Perkins, as we know, finishes up by a certain date.
He did say that they wouldn't be you don't want to actually plant the trees and shrubs until the fall. I guess that's the better time for plants to get established. So, and he also said that, okay, so it goes out to bid, but then E.H. Perkins, obviously, which is very familiar with this, has the opportunity to bid. We know that they're, they are probably, it's 6 to 8 weeks from now would be when they'd be likely done with the Corderville Road work, which is ongoing right now. And
Bless you.
the way the bidding process works, that you should keep a bid open at least 2 weeks, explain to you the whole process, even what day of the week you cross that. So basically, you would want to time it so that you get the plans ready enough to go out in the bid package, and then you get at least 2 weeks to get to respond to the bid. Then probably there's some time for the bid to be accepted and approved. And then if E.H. Perkins bid on it and then bid was accepted, then the timing worked out so that they could just move right from the Corderville Road project up the street and get all this done. That would be the most efficient way of doing it. But I do think that means we could have a meeting next week and try to.
Well, but the issue is Perkins gonna do the stone walls?
But okay, I see what you're saying.
I
They're not.
understand, I think, the process that you're outlining, but it is possible, right, that Perkins doesn't get the contract and it's another
Yep,
contract?
that's
Okay,
right.
because it's an open bid, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
If someone was to do the work, cheaper or.
Yeah. Thank you.
May I ask a question? Are we here concerned in voting on contracts, on plans, or what do we think the park should be?
Yeah, I'm just mentioning this stuff because it affects like the timing of,
Not our problem.
not sure I agree. I mean,
Well,
I understand,
we
I
can
understand
take-
what you're saying, but from this committee's point of view, it's not our problem.
Well, here, Marguerite, what did you expect us to do tonight?
the plan tonight is for us to look at what we have here from VHB
Okay.
and to say, as far as the hardscaping, the size, and the content of the inside of the park, are we okay on this?
Okay.
And then the issue of walls around is another segment, because whoever is doing this is not going to be doing the walls.
So Bill, so apparently.
I mean, I think we're at a
Hunting
certain
this
kind
back
of
to the select
loggerheads,
board.
because I think for some of this, the issue of the fencing and stone walls and the resolution of that question, I know for some folks here, it's not part of the current considerations. And I think for some folks, it is, very much is. And I don't know how to sort of bridge that gap. Personally, I do think both is a matter of aesthetics and it's a matter of, without being an alarmist, safety.
But the-
that
but
some
the issue
demarcation,
was-
a clear demarcation other than granite curbing is actually very, very
Okay,
important.
but this is new because the last time we went over this, there wasn't really a mention of the stone walls or the other fence.
Actually, there was a mention of stone wall, and I remember Kevin specifically remarking that the design plan that we received didn't
Didn't
include
have
any
that?
stone walls. And
But
why,
the feed, we decided to accept it as it was. We voted to accept it as it was.
okay, but now we have a mandate from the select board which says there must be stone walls in the park. And they just voted this week.
Well, I don't
I mean,
know. We
yeah.
could just give up on the whole thing and let them put grass there.
I agree.
I mean, one could vote and accept the plan, and at the same time, vote and accept that there has to be a wall at some
Correct.
point. I don't care who builds it, and I don't care how much it costs, but that's what we said we want.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
That's
this,
a good idea.
a lot of this is a sort of money issue that we're hard up against, and, I acknowledge that Stonewall building is very expensive, but, again, that's sort of not my concern, and
We haven't, that's not one of our concerns.
Right.
Cost isn't one of our concerns.
I agree to some degree.
I don't agree
I
with
don't
that.
agree with you
It's not,
either.
it never in our charge was,
Except the presentation to town meeting where people said, you want to do the land swap based on the bubble plane you
I
showed.
agree, it's a great idea, but this committee didn't do the presentation.
Well, this is, we're only an
I
advisory
did.
group. I mean, we can say, we insist we want the stone walls, and then the select board can choose to ignore that component of our
agree.
recommendation.
Well, how
And the
about,
select board themselves
Go ahead.
insisted on Tuesday.
I agree with it too.
The issue is just whether it gets done as part of
this?
Agreed.
this, or again, coming back to the idea I had about like a wrap up. I think you're concerned, well, that might never get done, but, I feel there would be probably a good, it makes a lot of sense, particularly in advance of the tricentennial, to have a little, I don't think it would be that much money, where you're not building new things, you're not relocating streets, you're putting in new drainage structures. You're just cleaning up some of the issues that Kevin has mentioned about the town common. And then, signage around maybe the old burial ground or something, a unified signs design. and
That's
then-
off our mandate.
Right. What do you say?
That is off our mandate. Our
Yeah, but
mandate is
it's,
just to
but it's,
deal with this piece right here.
I think, Marguerite, I don't know if you're interested in this idea that I'm talking about, but, if the working group, you make some tweaks, any tweaks that the group wants to make to this plan, and then, okay, the bid, package for this goes out, this work starts, and then, there is a new board, and then there's a goal setting process, and this is a little project that, it would be ideal to start talking about it, like right at the beginning of the kind of goal setting phase of the next board, that you say, look, we got a lot accomplished, and by the end of this year, you're gonna see a really nice park. Here's a list of some other related things that we could do in this area, and, ask the other members of the board, is there an appetite on really the select board really leading an effort, or maybe with the historical commission, to try to say, hey, can we kind of put together like a package of, down the improvements in the historical area of the town that all kind of unify it. Probably wouldn't cost that much money, funding source could be community preservation, right? And then, you start talking about that in like May or June, then you have kind of a target to maybe have it by like a fall town meeting or the next annual town meeting. I do think it would be good if we talked about two different names for the park. If you're talking about putting a sign right there, entering historical, wouldn't it also be nice to have a sign either like right beneath or saying with the name of the park?
Maybe. Yeah, there's a compelling name.
Wait, just to go back for one moment. to, like, if we imagine Twilight Zone, something stops us from meeting again, we need to tell the select board something. Like, wouldn't the best thing we could say is, you know, this design as we see it, and since there's room for the walls, put in the walls in as timely a manner as possible.
Sure.
So
And
I would
basically,
rather, I think with any site plan, I mean, obviously, we're not a planning board, right? But this is essentially a site plan review, and I would prefer to see it in the plans if we expect it to be there, just as a general practice. I think that's what the
I
planning board
understand.
does, that's what other boards, you know.
well,
BBA,
I
like-
understand
that's-
that, but at this point, we.
Because
we
if it's
can
not in the
either say
plans, it probably
we-
won't get done, right?
No, I don't agree with that, but
Well,
Hmm,
you don't know what you're gonna get.
That's fair enough, that's a very good point.
so how about this? If we just. We could go back, you know, report back to Greg, this question came up, you know, can you point out to us where they are in the prior plans? If they're not there, can we put them in? Do you know that if we put them in this plan, do you think that would explode the budget? Then if the answer is yes, then suggest to the select board you accomplish as much of it as, I mean, he's saying they're gonna do some of it, a lot of it. I just don't know whether it goes the entire length of it.
Okay,
Uh,
so how about this? We can say, as the working group, we're fine with the plans, but we stipulate there should be stone wall on the Route 85 side and some sort of historic-ish looking wall, either stone or the post and cast iron.
I think
On
it's
the
rather
other
that we
side.
get a drawing, a plan of the
Right.
walls.
Well, so do we
Which I don't
want that?
think, I'm not just saying this to waylay us, but, you know, I think it's a pretty, well, there's a couple of issues, I think, right? One is there's a specific length of the wall. I don't know how much was removed. I think the planning board has an
You mean
idea.
stone wall?
Stone wall.
Mhm.
So we have to have that much wall in there now. And then also, if we want more from a design aspect, we could choose to do that, and we have to figure out where we would want it.
Right,
Or where
and that
we-
was a very ragged wall,
where
I'd
we
also
wouldn't want
point out, right, that was a ragged wall. It wasn't a well-built wall, it was just sort of a tumbled down wall. And I'd assume they'd build a better, less ragged wall, but also, to Kevin's point, the new sort of plumb bob cemented yellow sandstone wall is not exactly what I have in mind for the way I would like it to look.
Right. I mean, it'd be interesting to have asked VHB simply to cost out a couple alternatives and simply express the concern about
Oh, I'm sorry, is that what I have?
fencing
No, no.
barriers. Sorry,
Okay.
Bill.
No, only thing I was asking is if in fact we have this plan drawn with a stone wall. Is that when in fact that goes out for bid, is the entire plan bid on or only the plan that we bid on?
It's the whole plan.
You would say the entire plan, like
What can one say? Oh, except for the stone wall, take a separate bid on the stone.
Well, so here's the thing, if VHB
there's a way
builds
that
the
you
wall,
can do that.
if I can just speak for a second, if VHB builds the wall, it's gonna look like the one next to the community house. So my sense of it is, you might want to find something that would do more historic looking wall.
I think part of the
VHB
problem
isn't
is,
actually building it, right? Isn't it Perkins, well, we don't know who's building it.
Well, it's
Yeah.
Perkins slash VHB, right, exactly, you wanna have a wall that looks like a historic wall.
What I'm driving at here is
Mhm.
can the committee say, this is what we want, oh, but if it doesn't fall within the budget. And that's under now the board of selectmen's purview, or somebody's purview of
Mhm.
ours. What can be left out? What would you choose to leave out? And a stone wall might be one of those things.
Yeah, no, there is a way that you can have for example, like, you can have a bid that says, I mean, I've seen this before. You must do A, B, C, D, and your bid has to include your proposal for the price for A, B, C, D. While you're at it, if you want, why don't you also give us a quote on if, together with that same project, what would be the price if you did A, B, C, D, and E all at the same time?
Exactly.
And then, so that's the way that some things like improvements to the golf course and other road paving projects where some other additional good related work happens altogether, because it's efficient for a contractor to just do it all at the same time.
I've seen commercial buildings. do
Yep,
it that way.
yep.
So, maybe that's a solution. In other words, when it goes back, have somebody draw in a stone wall and label it as E, and as the case may be, and then send the whole plan out to bid and have them bid accordingly.
Marguerite, I have a comment that has something that doesn't have to do with the stone wall, but I don't know if you want.
Well, should we move on
Yeah.
from this? So
Yes, what is your, okay, just,
Because I know other
curious.
people haven't gotten really chance to speak yet, or,
okay.
but here's my quick point, that in the center,
Mhm.
the historical marker, I asked Greg and Michael Quickman, you know, the content of that hasn't been determined yet, right? You said, yeah, you can fill it in later, but I think that was in like Patty Fiore's plan. This was, I thought, a little bigger, maybe, you know, like 42 inches diameter. I think it could be, might be nicer if it was bigger, wider.
Which one? The,
this one in the brick
In
plaza,
sheet, in sheet 2 of 8, in sheet 2 of 8, big plaza,
yep. Yeah, I've got it right.
that little
here.
circle,
Yes, it's right.
it says,
it's on this
so
one.
you
Oh,
have
yeah.
bricks.
Yeah.
And the bricks go all the way up to the circle. And then the circle says 42-inch diameter
Okay,
times
that's
5
this.
inches thick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I,
That's about
3.5 feet.
All right,
It's 42.
okay, that's good, all right.
right, well, so here's the deal, on this, from the historical commission's, official,
Yes.
perspective.
All right.
It's about
Is it,
That's straight, yeah, that's big enough.
you know, with all the stuff, the,
I think that might be a
this
distance
group has
or-
had to-
or, no, compass bearing here. So I would just.
with all the stuff this group has had to grapple with, which has been monumental, there's been, unfortunately, and through no one's fault, very little time that we've had to spend on historical aspects. And so what we're left with at this point is little marker of 42 inches with unspecified, I don't know, text. Is it just a sundial? Is it whatever? And the fact of the matter is, if you compare this park to the one that's down in Cordoba, that one, of course, has a very simple and coherent narrative. If you've been there, there's the bell from the mills that summon the workers. There's a very nice plaque. I took a photo of it this afternoon that gives a map of the area and points out where the mills were and all that stuff. And it's quite good and quite cohesive. It tells a very simple, clean, understandable story. Unfortunately, we are not blessed in this particular location with the same simplicity. What we have here is a really, really complicated story of, you know, Native American habitation, unfortunately, in a certain respect, unfortunately for the sake of the project, but from another standpoint, we didn't, you know, the archaeological dig didn't locate graves. So it's sort of a certain narrative that might have evolved, evaporated. Again, you know, Greg Waller's contention is that those graves are in fact inside the walls in the northeast corner of the OBG, possibly under the walls or possibly in that scrim of trees just outside of it. But he allows that they could be across the street under St. Mark's Fields or over where the mustering ground, you know, the soccer fields are, or closer to Pilgrim Church. And, but that's a complicated story. We know there was Native American habitation in the area. We know that graves are very likely, in Greg's opinion, within the bounds of the cemetery walls. We know there's a story there. We've got that William Washington story, which is really fascinating. But, you know, that the site of what we believe the house is actually on the library grounds,
Library,
you know,
right.
under the pollinator garden. He was a steward of St. Mark's for only, 7 years. It's a fascinating tale. His son succeeded him. That's a great story. I don't think it's enough to drive the whole park. You've got it. So again, the Nipmuc presence. You have the Burns Fiore Waters take, which was, the three components of the town: training ground, burial ground, meeting house, all visible from that main plaza. That's a very compelling story, but that cannot be the only story that's told there, because I think it really unfairly privileges the colonial settlement,
Right.
which it's a more complicated story than that. We also have a very interesting story about the archaeological dig. I would note that Greg Wahlberg's report catalogs 125 artifacts, pottery shards, glass, a lot of coal that he found. But can I tell you, I counted today the artifacts that are in my possession, that Dan Blanchard has picked up, just picking it up, not even digging, over many months. There are over 275 pieces, 275 pieces. And I put a couple in my pocket because I really wanted to bring them down. And some of the more interesting ones, Dan sent me one I haven't gone to pick up from him yet. This is a Staffordshire pottery from the 1830s. Purple transfer ware. I've been able to actually identify the pattern. This piece is a piece of a marmalade jar, which goes to about 1870. That,
That's James, somebody,
yeah,
GAM
I
is
think
for James.
Jam.
whatever,
Rose
but
James.
Dan knows what this
It's
is.
the
He's
company's
shown me a
name.
photo of
Yeah.
the full thing. So that's a fascinating story. And, I invited him to our last historical commission meeting. He talked to us about the artifacts and what he's found. It's a ton of stuff. And, I said, well, how would we do this? Could you, if the Historical Society were going to stay in the flag school, you could just direct them right across the street, go look at this stuff. That's not, they're going to be elsewhere. They're interested in those artifacts, by the way. But there was some conversation about even could some of them be displayed within the library, and you would direct people from the park towards, I don't know, maybe the library trustees or, the director is not interested in that, but maybe some small display of them. Dan points out that you can go and buy full pieces of these kinds of things that we have artifacts from. So you could display the full jar, you can buy for a couple $100, or the full plate, and then the fragment. Now, Dan points out, and I concur, and so does Greg Wahlberg, by the way, that these artifacts we're finding are basically trash dumps. They're
Right.
pieces of trash. So let's not kid
No,
ourselves.
It's a mid.
Right. This isn't Pompeii, right? But it's interesting in Southborough, and it tells a very interesting story. But I have struggled, in other words, to find something singular like the Corderville Park. Here's a bell. This is what happened. Our story is really, 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 really complicated. And so what we sort of came to on the Historical Commission, and we also discussed the integration of this park with a larger idea of a history walk that would go all the way from
To the
Sears
town.
Road to the center of town and around and back and down to the rural cemetery. And the Historical Society folks have done a great deal of work on that, and they basically have it ready to go. And that would be self-guiding and done like with a cell phone. And so it wouldn't require, because I am very much attuned to, for instance, Ryan over at the library's concerns about sign pollution. You got things stuck in the ground everywhere. I know you're, Marguerite, you're concerned about that. So we don't feel at the Historical Commission the need for a lot of signage here.
Right.
It might be some very discreet, things that you would scan with your phone or something like that, or small, or maybe no physical thing at all. But the matter of this so-called historical marker in the center, I'm a little, to be quite honest, like that this is labeled a history walk. To me, it's a little silly. I get why it is, but it's just a path. It's a park with a path. It's nothing coherent right now. It could come to that, and that's my hope, and that's my goal on the Historical Commission, that we'll knit this all together, and this will be a place where you come through and you use your phone to find out the story of William Washington, and to find out the story, quite possibly of the archaeological digs. We'll show some photos of these artifacts and maybe say, you want to see more, either maybe go into the library and see some, or go across to the new Fayetteville Hall and see,
This is, again.
you know,
I think this would be, all of this would be great for this other like.
right, it's an overlay. It's an
Yeah,
overlay.
The next
Right.
project.
So I guess the question, so for us, you know, because it's a complicated story, I don't know in terms of this so-called historical marker, what you can really coherently say there. And, you know, I know there was a lot of sentiment toward this idea of the training ground, the burial ground, and the meeting house. That was the organizing principle.
So I totally understand what you're saying, I think, in terms of integrating it. And I
Right.
think having something around it to enclose it is, gotta have it.
Right.
My other question is, it's also possible, when we look at this built, it suggests other things to us that we can't see right now. And that, yeah, I understand what you're saying about, do we want to plonk something up here like a Statue of Liberty, you know, in the
Right.
middle of there, and it's like, were we locked into that if we look at it and suddenly it's all wrong?
Well, there had always been on this group opposition, I thought, to, for instance, figurative sculpture. You know, nobody wanted
Yeah,
a kind of Nipmuc warrior, which seems like an
Aw.
old-fashioned kind of, you know, thing to do.
19th century.
Yeah, everybody,
patronizing
there was that sentiment,
Last
you
of
know,
the
towards something
Mohegans,
sort of
right, yeah.
quiet, gentle, low
Right.
touch.
Right.
And that's what basically we have here. But
Yeah.
I'm a little resistant to, you know, must it be called a history walk? Currently, really, it isn't. Again, a projected history walk would be something, again, with a light touch for the town. I am adamantly opposed to a kind of Freedom Trail red stripe down the sidewalks of Main Street.
Aw.
Those are my plans.
I think it would be silly. That
Let's
was
hope they're
an
dashed.
idea that was floated.
Well,
But I think a way that interested folks could guide themselves through, you know, it's not, for instance, you know, in front of the community house, there's that big thing, a plaque, one of those Henry Knox. Here went Henry Knox with his
Dragging the
cannon,
cannons,
right? You
right,
know, and
yeah.
everybody knows that story. Easy story to tell, but with a lot of text. And there's no provision here for, you know, text, but there's also no budget in here. And this is a little bit of my concern for how we would, there are interesting stories. William Washington, I think the story of the dig would be really cool to tell. And the Burns Fiore Waters idea about the three elements, I think, is very important. I think the Nipmuc presence is important. Those are the four components. Elements of a town, William Washington, Nipmuc presence, and archaeological dig. Those are my four,
Well,
you know.
there's also, if I can just
Yeah.
for 2 seconds, in Boston, there's a lot of people coming through that will use these over and over and over. Tourists come in and they use it.
Right.
But in Southborough, the people who live here will become familiar with it.
Right.
And then it's not like we're going to have this huge influx of people from other towns and cities coming to look at it. So
Right.
on the one hand, yes, the instruction is good and we should all know that we're where people were before and what it was about, but it's not going to be a high volume
Right.
tramp through kind
The-
of
But
thing.
the other last thing I'll say about this is that, you know how in that Corderville Park, there is that kind of map that shows what was there?
Yep.
We could put a, you know, somewhere, you know, around
Yeah.
this plaza, a larger thing that said, you know, one of the things, the other person that came to our last meeting was Michael Wyson, because I wanted his perspective, and his perspective was of this area as a crossroads that did evolve from Indian Trail, Native American Trail to, you know, a colonial path of commerce.
Right.
And it actually, Michael Wyson's vision of that area jibed very well with Mr. Blanchard's vision of it as this sort of complex, multi-layered story that over time. So, you know, I'm thank you for indulging me
No, because
just
you're
to talk
picking
about
things
this.
up.
But
so
I'm trying to, I've really tried very hard, and we have on the Historical Commission. If I could give you a bell
It would be so, you know, it would like clarify
But
everything.
the other
Well,
part
can
of that, Kevin, is there could have been natives living down there. It just wasn't
This-
part of the decision of what the park was about.
Oh, and we,
It's near water.
well, exactly, down there, sure, and up here, we know there was Native American habitation.
Right.
And the fact that we didn't find graves, for instance, only in a sense complicates the story.
They may not have buried where they lived.
So
Well, Greg thinks they're, like
So
I said,
often- Here's Andrew's having.
in the,
we're
yeah, sorry.
quite
I
off
know that
topic.
Bill, but I'll just say this really brief. So what you're talking about there, I think the relevance to tonight's meeting is, look, it might be a little bit weird or unfulfilling to have, okay, the paths, grading, the trees all get put in, and then in the centerpiece, you just got like a historical marker that's 42 inches diameter, and we basically think like, okay, well, we'll later think about what it says there. What if, and again, I think it makes sense to get Greg and Michael's input on this is, you could also, what if you just took it out, okay?
Took out the,
No, if you took out this historical marker for now, that's not to say we don't want any historical marker there, but just, I imagine it's probably cheaper for now to just have it bricks, and then if you wanted to, then there's this other second phase project that says, okay, we have ideas for some signage of how we would have, what we would have in there, and then as the centerpiece, you know, we want to have something right in the center of this plaza that it probably would be like not that expensive to just take up the bricks and then put in the new marker that you wanted, rather than, I guess the concern I have is like, what if you put in this marker and then you're like, no, we don't like the way it fits in with that, or we wanted to put a bell there or something.
but there's no marker in this. It's just a flat spot.
Well,
waiting
no,
for
there
it.
is,
So I guess.
this is what it is.
Please
It's a
return.
little thing that says text to go here to be provided by town.
No, so what I'm
Andrew,
suggesting is.
I was
to get
thinking the same
people's-
thing.
Right. Leave
If
it-
you just
leave it
take-
blank for now.
Get there, what do you know, BHB, what do you think about taking out that historical marker? That's not because we don't want to have a historical marker, but just we don't know what it would say yet. And then if you just proceeded to do the work, just fill it with bricks for now. And then some other group is formed that makes recommendations about how to fill in the content with it.
We haven't even, our job is simply to do the bare bones, right?
This
we're
makes
not
it even
talking
more
about-
bare bones.
Yes.
Marguerite, currently it's included in the plan. That's what I think he's saying, remove it from the plan.
No, wait a
so that-
minute, the bricks are there and the
If you-
flat
if you-
spot.
if you remove it,
Now, if you look on page, if you look on page 2, at the
Mhm.
large plaza,
Yes.
it says, or sorry, sheet 2.
Yep.
I guess that's also page 2.
Brick Plaza,
Brick
radio.
Plaza,
room.
and then it says in the middle, historical marker, 42-inch diameter ×5, thick medallion of granite with thermal finish, flush with brick pavers.
Right.
So I think Andrew is saying,
Remove it.
remove that, and I would
Okay.
agree with that since we don't know what it is. Also, if
Okay.
there's gonna be this larger walk, you might want, I also think 42 inches is a huge sign, so that's just me, but you might want a series of smaller signs, 3 signs spread out, or, you know, we don't know yet, so I agree with
I
that.
think
It
it's like
wouldn't,
in
it
the
wouldn't
ground.
look ugly if it just, instead of 42, like, what would you rather have? A 42-inch granite polished thing where it doesn't say anything yet, and then you come up with later, or just fill it with bricks for the time being, and then you come up with another idea if you want to put something in the centerpiece. Great.
Although I would say that the outline of the bricks kind of forming the circle,
Hmm.
I think it might be tough to actually fill it in all with bricks, so maybe put like a piece of
It's a
Stone-
granite.
stone or
piece of
something.
Granite.
Plywood. I know, just
Whatever.
just
A
tuck
stone
something
circle or
on there. It's no
something.
big deal.
I guess that I actually would support that because I think it
Taking
would
it
be
out?
better. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about, that then the monkey goes on the historical commission's back to come up and to get the money somehow to put in
That.
the stuff to be determined. And like I said, it's not for lack of effort on our part. It's the fact that the story is really, really complicated. And I'm sensitive, for instance, to like something that only featured
Hmm.
the training ground, burial ground, meeting house stuff, which I supported from the beginning and I really, really like. But you can't tell that as the only story there because it's too complicated, you know? And I would, in some ways, I'd rather have just a sundial that was a sort of natural thing and that everybody could meet up under, you know,
Well,
colonialists and Native
This
Americans.
is true, and maybe the point about this area is that it does have so many levels, and it was shared by so many different groups, and they weren't always friends with each other.
Right, and we could tell that story, I think, in a maybe a larger, similar to what's in Corderville. I know some people don't like that part, but I think it's kind of nice.
Still,
I'll give you a point of information, or a little information. The SBAC committee has asked some of the technical folks in town to come up with what might be a common solution for people to use cell phones. Everyone seems to have them these days, to use cell phones to not only direct people from place to place, and the Horse Historical Society would be interested in that. But you can tell a great deal of information using that sort of thing too. So you're concerned about what do I want to say and how complex it is, might be able to be satisfied by something like that, where somebody could come up and get a 5-minute discussion and then move to another area and get another 5-minute discussion if they choose to do it. The only thing we really need then is something to say, pull out your cell phones and have a nice time. So that would be the nature of the information that you want in the park. Now, that sort of stuff is driven by, there are a number of different solutions, but it could be Wi-Fi, it could be Bluetooth, it could be GPS, it could be, there are a number of different types of solutions which might be appropriate for that sort of thing. I like Bluetooth myself, but all that means is that one has to take a very small object, bury it, put it in a little post, something of that nature, and then that becomes the information source for everybody using the park.
And also, not only is it more adaptable so that if, let's just say, the story changes and you
Story
find out
changes.
more information, but also you could use a screen reader or something if you
I love that.
Absolutely.
were more.
Absolutely, you
yeah.
could change the story month by month, tell the Christmas story. tell the
Right,
Christmas
yeah, I
story.
think the society conceives of that information as a kind of wiki that would be editable, you know, and curated, and
Sure.
but that could expand, evolve as new information is found. So
And so the discussion of the signage and that sort of thing, first of all, by the way, those cell phones are ADA class compliant. I don't care if you're blind or deaf, you can still get access to that class of information by your cell phone. And so the whole issue concerning signs and the braille associated with signage and that sort of thing, which is expensive to put on, we can kind of ignore at the stage of the game, save us a ton of money and make it a hell of a lot more flexible from the historical commission and society's point of view, this case may be.
yeah, I think that what people are going to be focused on is at this point is going to be the plantings, hopefully the stone walls and how aesthetically attractive it is.
Here we go.
And which is why I have a couple comments about plantings.
Here we go.
Yes, please.
I'm going to be quick.
No.
So
No,
on the PHP plans, the 3 largest trees that are shown are slated to be white oak.
Yes.
That's like, what is that? Seamer,
Yes.
Harvey Keitel is asking Quentin Tarantino, are you an oak man? Where does that in Pulp Fiction? I'm an oak man. I like white oak. But I don't want 3 white oaks. I'm interested in some biodiversity. I'd like to see, for instance, one of the disease-resistant American elms, which, you know, would be quite nice to be attempted. I think that's an interesting one. The other thing that I had concern about when I look at this is the windbreak that's proposed. They propose 7 white spruce. That reminds me, even just seeing them depicted on the plan, of the kind of thing where people want privacy from their neighbor's driveway and they put up a row of arborvitae or something. You know, they're gonna have these 7 evergreens, again, all the same tree.
The trees that remain behind the current sort of hurricane, temporary fencing to
Mhm.
protect them,
Yep.
those are all deciduous trees. Several of them are dead, by the way, and
Yes,
they're
a lot
gonna need
of
to be
them are dead,
removed. They're
right.
they're scrubby trees.
Yeah,
But I would like to ask VHB to go back with their expertise, and let me be the first to say that I have zero expertise in this. And our plant expert is no longer with us, but, I am concerned, that's a that's actually northeast facing exposure. That might not be conducive to the growth of those trees, and you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and if they do thrive, what you're gonna get is a wall of evergreens that's gonna look like a privacy fence.
Wasn't that the point though?
No, I don't think it
well,
is. I think
what he said
it
was,
was a more robust windbreak,
you
not.
needed to make a good windbreak.
Right, so a more robust windbreak doesn't mean a single species. You could plant eastern white pine along with a spruce or something else. But I'm opposed to 7 white
Cluster
spruce
bushes.
in a row. I think that's not a good idea, and for the same reason that I'm opposed to the white oak. About all the other stuff, the 112 purple milkweed, I'm agnostic because I have no expertise in the matter, but I don't think you have to be an arborist genius to say, why are all the trees the same species? The 3 specimen trees are gonna be all white oaks. Why? Can't we try an American
Do
elm?
oak and elm do okay together? Sometimes they don't like each
Let's
other.
ask the arborist. That's what they're
I
getting
think that's
paid
why
$500 an hour for.
I think that's why they gave us 3 white oaks.
I'd like them to tell me that.
All right.
Same thing with the white spruce. I think there's something wrong about that.
So it's too homogeneous, you want.
Yep,
I can
exactly.
say from the mistakes that I've made, my own landscaping, that I think the way it was in here, it does make sense. Like, why don't we just ask for some input?
Yeah, well, can we ask them that question? Can you put your, they must have tree experts
I
in the
think that was
office.
Michael making those decisions, and he was the one
I
explaining
think
that
those are
the
3 deciduous.
white,
There was
the
a
white,
rationale for this.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to
white
ask.
oak-
And also,
Ornamental
one
trees,
thing about those trees,
Okay,
like,
yeah, that's probably.
Yeah,
what
those
it
3,
One
and
of
then
the-
No, that's 3 oaks.
certain that
3
they,
oaks there.
they survived,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree, I
Yeah,
agree.
I think
But
this
when
is
you, of
Michael's
course,
decisions,
when you
yeah.
go with
Spruces,
one
I guess.
species and one
Yeah,
species,
that's-
you get an infestation that likes, some disease or whatever, that
Right,
insect that likes it, then they're all
unless you know that that's a species that is,
resistant to
Yeah.
everything.
yeah.
right.
has-
Well, the elm may not get that big then.
Right.
I think that's
Well,
an
let-
interesting idea.
I'd just like to ask the question, that's all, and then
I hadn't thought of that, so I think that's an interesting idea. And I know personally, like on my street, we had the
So,
Gypsy moth
Can I
caterpillars
just say
that
that the
killed
more
all the-
uniform the species are, the less it looks natural. Natural
Right.
is a diverse, little this, little that, this kind of tree, that kind
Right.
of tree, evergreens, deciduous trees. If you have a line of evergreens, and then the same 3 deciduous trees at the peak of the park, you've got something that looks very manicured. And I thought this group's intention from the start was a more natural, something akin to what was there, which was.
That was kind of
It
rad.
was a ratty, scrubby lot.
We
in
know
some
if
sense.
these trees are all native. I think we told him. that we
Yes.
wanted
Yeah.
to-
Absolutely, okay.
Okay, that's
So
I'm done.
say row, okay, so far I'm hearing, we want clarification on the stone walls and the fence. We want clarification on the center of the big
yeah, what
patio.
if we just took it out and, it's like if we don't know what it's gonna say yet, and we
Mhm.
don't, and there might be some other plan where there's enhancements to this and you all wanna make it all cohesive, what do they think? Would it be better to just take out the center thing, in which case you just have bricks, and then maybe at some later point, you would just take up some of the bricks and then put in something else? Or keep this stone thing there,
Mhm.
because it's easy to put something on top of it or etch into it, etc.
The other thing I was thinking about this is that in that closet, you could simply, maybe as part or as all, is put, if we decided to ever want a name and if it was accepted, whatever the park were named. In other words, if it is it Heritage Park or, a lot of, some names were kicked around. I thought, I like the idea of course, this part of the Marlboro grant
was originally Stony Brook, and was it Stony Brook Park? Is it Heritage Park? Is it Crossroads Park? Because everyone keeps talking about the native trails and the convergence of roads and convergence of cultures.
Cape Madison.
Cape Madison Park.
You know, there is a formal policy on about naming, and there's some criteria that have to be built out, but well, I think where you were going is like the list of questions to maybe go back to VHB,
Right.
and then does it make sense to
All right, stone walls and
schedule another
fence.
meeting next
Oh,
week?
oh,
I think that
please,
makes sense.
mercy, mercy.
Well, actually, I think that makes sense, Andrew. And also, I don't know if it's possible, but would it be possible to have Michael Kletchman or Greg Russell attend? So
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
just because I found that whenever we had other concept plans or questions, that they were able to address any concerns that we had right there without us having
This
to.
will be an added cost. We understand that they bill.
I understand that, but the town is okay with us spending money now, so.
Right, yeah, now that it's approved, didn't we give back 20 grand? Is that right?
No, that under ARPA, the select board voted to give $20,000
Right.
of ARPA funds to the work group, and the work group said,
I mean, it is the final engineering plan, so I think actually, are any of us engineers on this? I know most of us aren't. Are you an engineer, Bill? I don't know.
for getting the plan
Okay,
late
yeah.
on Tuesday afternoon,
So
and then
just
scheduling
having-
a meeting on 3 days later and beginning to talk about it is pretty good, so, but what about next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
So the questions are trees, kind, and walls and fence around, and what was the other one? The middle of.
Historical.
Patio, more circle. What else? While we're at it, we can bring in questions before.
I have a question about the material that the path will be made out of.
Yes, the crushed
I saw that it
granite.
was, I don't have it in front of me, something crushed granite or something, so just to look and how permeable it is, kind of that kind of thing, but what other options are, that kind of thing, so.
We looked at that because I think it has an underpinning, so it's quite permeable, and the decision for that, or the somewhat decision for that, was that it was the most permeable surface. It had the least runoff happening with it. And
Okay,
then
that's
it's
good.
also handicapped fabulous furniture.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with it, I
Yeah.
just wanted to confirm, so that's it.
And we're looking at next Wednesday.
May 10th.
Yeah, one of the things we could do is like, I'm free on Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon. So if everyone is available on both of those, we can just reach out to Greg and say, could you make a meeting Wednesday or Thursday? And then if he's,
Wednesday, okay, let's
Yeah.
aim for Wednesday.
Let's ask him about Wednesday.
Well, he could zoom in.
Maybe.
is everyone also available on Thursday?
Wait, is this during the day or?
Mm-mm.
And the
No,
evening.
no.
Oh, in the evening?
Well,
And we
he
try
could
to keep
zoom in,
it kind
he
of
could
just
zoom
short
in.
and focused.
All right, all right.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so stone walls and fence, center of the big patio, species of trees. And Grant, you have a question about the crushed granite again?
Yeah.
Okay, that was, remember that thingy that we had that was the printout of the Kafka Granite Company?
I do, I just wanted to.
I think
ask
that was-
questions
okay.
While he's there.
Okay. Other questions?
I don't, I noticed that we don't have public comment on the agenda,
Correct?
but I feel like anybody like Patty and Debbie here that have come down on a Friday night must really care.
We have no lives.
And we have 3 or 4 virtual attendees. If they have something to say, is it okay with the chair
Well,
and
the
the vice
chair
chair?
is fine
I
with it
would-
all. So any other questions from the board that I can forward to Greg and Michael Klushman so that they can be on top of it for answers?
One question from me.
Yes,
A
please.
series of questions is,
Yes.
I don't think I see, or I don't understand while looking at the plans, the width, the radius of the various walkways and the slopes. And that would be important just from, ADA or
Bill,
accessibility.
that's on one of the slope, the gradient
Yeah, it's
Great.
is on one of those
It's on this one
pages of that was sent out to us.
Page.
I didn't bring that page. I had several of these pages
Page
printed
5.
out.
that is.
That'd be-
But it helps me.
Okay, fine, I'm fine with that then.
You find it?
I do see it.
Yeah.
And it's all that, it's less than 7%, which is good.
They did their homework, yeah.
The width, it would be nice to have it as wide as possible so that 2 wheelchairs can pass. Either that or we're gonna have to put an additional turning area so that, we get the wheelchairs.
I
off
think
the
what he
area.
said was that the distance between the little patios
Yeah.
was compliant for turning or for passing.
And that includes one that comes down from 85 all the way down to the parking lot.
Yeah, you can ask them, but I think I said we've gotta have turning room and passing
All right,
room.
there is a standard for that, and I
Yeah.
just wanna make sure it's conformed.
All right, I'll put that by.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This isn't a question for VHB, but just kind of an administrative note. Can we post the plans to the website that we have in front of us now?
Post the VHB plan?
The ones that we've been reviewing tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
To the
It's
website?
part of the packet, but it's not.
Oh,
So that was never made public.
Mea
We have no idea
culpa.
what you're talking about.
Okay.
And Milton.
I'll just forward this to you.
Well,
You wanna see what it is?
wasn't,
112 milkweed plants, do you know how stupid that is?
Milkweed plant? Who's talking about milkweed?
It's in the plan. It's
Oh, God.
Crazy.
The rain garden.
right here, 112 purple milkweed, 52 yellow wild indigo, 45 northern sea oats, 111 purple lovegrass, 64 Joe pie weed.
Oh my God.
I thought that was for the drainage.
Isn't that the rain garden?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's all in the
yeah,
garden.
that's a rain
rain
garden, don't you?
In the one green garden,
2, isn't it?
you're talking about the one, the second one, which is over at the other end.
No, I'll show you here. I'll show you, actually, it's very,
I should have posted this, I didn't, because for some reason, there were other things on the wall.
I'm forwarding you
Oh,
this.
it's a pocket. Okay, rain garden number 1 is. And then rain garden number 1 is- rain garden number 1 is 2 green. Rain garden number 2 is right over the side of the bottom. So in this, is all of those plantings, he's talking about 112 milkweed and all of that in this one area?
2 areas.
That's crazy. And they're charging you how much per milkweed plant? Wasn't it like $80 or $90 for freaking milkweed that you can go up across the street from me and dig up?
I'm gonna step up just one second.
Well, I can
This
send
is
it.
something that's going out to
Send it to
bid,
you right now.
so I don't know what the price of what any particular thing is going out to bid.
Well, there
Tell us
was
what
an
we can bid on.
original bid that was way back when,
Mhm.
part of Karen Galligan's bid thing, where the cost of a milkweed plant is like $80 a piece. It's nuts.
Well, that was a long debate between certain members and certain other members, not of this committee.
I understand, but why, if you're bidding it to the same people, why would you be able to be a little less price?
You bid say it's a public.
It's a public
Anyone-
bid.
Anyone can respond.
Could be a different contractor who does the work, because it's going out to an
Here.
open process again.
Okay, can I ask one important question?
Please.
Why does a replacement of the stone wall need to be included in the budget for this park?
Excellent question.
We are all of mixed mind, right?
Was, you know, in my opinion, a mistake by the DPW.
Right,
Because they didn't go to the planning, get permission to do that.
right.
That seems as though it should come out of some other budget within town and shouldn't at the 11th hour come out of the budget for this park.
It's not coming out of the budget for the park. It's coming out of the budget for the Main Street project. Though,
Is that
it
right,
is,
Sandra?
yes,
Is that what you're
So-
saying?
yes,
So
it's,
what,
it's not budgeted for the park. It's budgeted by the contractor who's doing the Main Street.
Only part of it, though. If we decide that we want to do an add an
it's-
additional portion, we would have to figure that out, I think.
You mean the granite post maybe with the cast iron fences?
No, I think
That's not a replacement.
It would be a
That's all
wall.
new.
we already had this discussion earlier, so I think
100
we can.
feet.
We
100 feet.
we have a list of questions, follow-up points. One
So-
of them
Yeah,
is, okay, in what set of plans is the stone wall replacement? Can you show that to us? We think they were in the
2021.
2021 plans, so just, that gets satisfied, and then there's a plan to basically determine, okay, like, when and in what sequence is the stone wall gonna get completed? And then there's a list of other follow-up questions about some tree species, and then also one of the things we're talking about is getting some advice on whether it makes sense to just take out the current, like, granite historical marker in the center of the plaza, just take it out because we don't know what it's gonna say yet, and then there,
But you could
let me
certainly-
finish.
Here's the base.
Because we talked about, there's all sorts of other ideas for kind of wrap-up work you could do from this that would be coordinated with things that you would do at the town common, maybe some things at the old burial ground with signage, and then have the filling in of the plaza come later as part of that work.
You know, Andrew, I don't disagree with you because, I mean, you have to obviously do something with that plaza, but you have a tricentennial coming up.
That's
And
exactly
you
what
could
we're
have
talking
some
about.
kind of a naming or
Exactly what we're talking about.
sponsoring thing to do that.
Yeah,
That
exactly,
all makes a lot of
exactly. Okay.
sense to generate money to sponsor something like that.
Okay, you're talking about a little bit of a different idea, but I think it's some idea to consider. I think you're talking about someone donating some money.
Yes, I am.
All right,
Get that tricentennial committee. right
Okay.
in
So, Marguerite,
applications.
yeah.
just in terms of questions for VHB, related to the stone wall,
Yes,
I think the 2021 plans are the ones on the DPW website. Is
Yes.
that correct?
correct.
So just maybe pointing out where and which,
On the
which
website?
sheet it's on so
Okay.
that we can reference them in
Okay.
advance of the
And
meeting.
the other thing I would throw in, if we're asked about the stone walls of VHB,
Yeah.
is I'd like to ask them about that granite post iron rail thing, because let's say if the guarantee to the agreement between the planning board and the select board was 100 feet of stone wall.
Yep.
I can tell you that the distance around this park is in excess of 300 feet.
Yes, and here's the other part. Where stone wall is missing also is
Right.
up here.
Right,
So
right,
stone wall's gonna have
right.
to be replaced all along
Right.
here and up here.
right.
And this granite and the a cast iron pipe is a whole new,
But my
Can
point is it'd be far less expensive. My guess is that to put a proper 30-inch beefy stone wall around the entirety of this perimeter is gonna cost more than the budget for
it's
the
gonna
entire
cost a
park.
lot of
Let's just
money.
make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
So that's, I'm trying to balance my concerns for aesthetics and for safety with some realism about the cost,
Yep.
and be a reasonable human being. But by the same token, and I think there's a point here that the stone wall in a way, and it actually jives with what you folks have said, it's sort of an independent issue in the sense that it shouldn't be coming out of the budget for this park project.
Can we take it out of the DPW budget? Or would that
Uh,
be
we
controversial?
Yeah, Karen Mulligan's consulting salary.
She's not,
She's not
Actually,
collecting
I'm
a
not familiar.
consultant salary.
She has offered.
do it for free.
Yeah, she will
To what?
to
Consult.
to answer some questions that John Butler has about the Hopkinton
Water
uh,
project.
work, water connection.
Oh,
So
that's
that's-
$100.
there's, what, as any
Well, we're
obligation?
somewhat straying
Anyways.
away into the weeds, as it were, people.
Yeah.
So let's finish up today with our questions for VHB. And again, public comment, 2 seconds. Yes, you're right, we're violating our own agenda. Sorry, people. But the other part of it is we are gonna get 100 feet of stone wall back out of this, but it's probably gonna come from the Main Street project contractors. And then we also want another couple hundred feet, as Kevin estimates, of some kind of wall around the north side of this. The other part of it is I am concerned that all stone walls are not equal. And to have a stone wall that is not historic looking is not my idea of a good deal. So we have to keep that in mind too.
We asked about different pricing for construction styles. I don't know what you call them, but loose, not loose, fully concrete mortar.
There's a drywall and then there's a concreted wall.
Right.
And the drywalls.
The
are
drywall
very-
is more expensive, obviously.
Well, drywall is what those stones were in. And drywall, you have to know, see, a drywall, owning a number of these, they're not like this, they're like this. And the large stones are stacked in, so like a pyramid, they fall slightly in. And then on the inside of it, all the way down the wall, are smaller stones which move a little bit, but the big ones are on the outside and they'll stay up for 300 years. So the ones we've got in
I
the
know it's an art and that's why it's
yeah, in the
expensive to
middle of
do.
Main Street, we've
Yeah.
got the ones that are plumb bob, and they're like fluke. They're just, gravity hates them. So you need somebody who knows how to do that. It's expensive to find somebody who does.
Well, so I'm saying, when we say build a wall, there's many different types
There's
of many
walls
different
and there's
costs.
walls,
So
exactly.
we should
Yeah,
maybe
I think
get a
that's good
sense
point.
of two different types of walls that,
Just need to find a
pricing
19th
options.
Century farmer, they know how to do that.
you have to get them from another country is what you have to do. You have to get them from Canada.
They're called rubble walls, or
Rubble
you'll see
walls, yeah.
rubble walls all over town. That's the way almost all walls in town are built.
Yeah,
except
which
for
are-
modern ones.
Yeah, and the modern ones they'll stay together for maybe 10 years.
Well, they're put together, sometimes they're simply laid up with appropriate stones. Sometimes they use a mortar and those
Right.
break apart in no time, so.
Yeah,
So we will ask about the quality and cost of the walls. We will ask about the types of trees, I believe. We will ask about the pathing and the permeability of the pathing.
Mhm.
And we will ask about the so-called medallion of granite, quotes from this plan, that's in the center of that brick plaza. And our plan to not put something literally in stone there yet. Are those all the things?
I think that's fine.
all right,
and
now
if,
the
and if they can attend our
trees,
meeting,
And if they can attend our meeting.
or
or zoom
Zoom.
in.
We'll do Wednesday or Thursday, so we'll
Yeah.
find out, okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Wait,
Can I ask one more question?
We have public comment.
Are we gonna do
Yeah.
a Zoom meeting?
Not really,
It's gonna be in
but-
person.
We're not supposed to have public
We're not
comment. Go
supposed-
ahead.
I'm sorry, one more question. I heard some
Wednesday
comments
night,
about having
Wednesday or Thursday.
the QR cards, whatever the communication under the auspices of the Historical Society, and I would like you to reconsider that. I think that by separating that out to an independent 501c3, not under the auspices of the town, in the direction of the town, you're making a mistake. That the control of the information that is being put out within this park area by the town should be under the auspices of the town.
You mean the historical commission?
Historical
Society.
Commission or the town, I mean, there's.
Well, the
you know, I mean-
historical commission is the town. and
Yes, I understand, the Historical Commission is the town.
I would say, Patty, that under the master plan, the historical commission is charged with working in collaboration with the historical society. So with regard to any historical walk, that would be, my intention would be to honor the marching orders given to me under the master plan and to cooperate with the historical society, but
It's
to.
also the bylaws of the Historical
but-
Society that 2 members of the Historical Commission should be seated on that board, which is currently not in
Right.
case and hasn't been for a number of years.
The only other thing I would say about it is that the historical commission, to be sure, will exercise its authority to include editorial oversight of any historical walk. There's nothing that stops a private organization from setting up their own historical walk, but I think it's in the interest of the town and in the historical commission to cooperate with the society and to thereby assert some control. And I see it as a mutually beneficial relationship if done properly. And
So
I'll
I'm
do
sorry,
my best.
Patty,
Say that you would lose control if
Go home.
Patty,
Yeah, okay,
did you
so-
say that the historical commission is required to have
You can
two
just go.
members?
I
from-
move
In the
to adjourn.
bylaws of the Historical Society.
Andrews moved to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It is 8:41.
Was that 6-0?
They're like, we're supposed to. do it
No,
by vote
I didn't vote.
outside.
That's
Oh.
the society's problem, it's not the town's
I
problem.
guess I abstained.
Okay, thank you. It's just for the minutes, Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Oh, I
this
know.
is a good discussion. I mean, what are?
Yeah, it is. It just
No,
doesn't
no,
have
no,
to.
I mean, no, you've been working all year, so, okay. So Patty, what are you concerned will go wrong with the current,
Historical Society should be.
Why don't you change your
you
bylaws?
do not?
No, I don't think they should have control over it.
And your, okay, I'm not saying yes or no, but what are your concerns?
Not sure, I didn't see you have a jacket, I really wasn't paying attention.
What was, you didn't walk in with.
Yeah, I did. I was concerned about, because I left Boston like.
Is it in your car?
Let's see.
That was
So
an
I actually
exhausting
didn't- I'm
2
gonna put
hours,
this
but
back.
effective. I think your idea about the fence is fantastic.
Well, it would be a cheaper alternative and like I said, consistent with what we have in the
I
center.
hate those new stone walls. Those ones like. next to the
Well, they're
community
junky.
house.
They're not gonna last.
I call them grocery store ones, like
They
the Hannaford.
are.
Well,
It
if you look at the
is.
one that's by the community.
Oh, Marguerite, close the meeting.
Really? I
Oh, wait a
knew
minute,
that.
hold
I mean,
on.
they're pieces of it, because
The concrete
they,
starts to
well, they
crumble.
use
There,
concrete,
done.
right? But when you have
Then
a
the
stone
stones
wall
are
like
ruined
that,
too, you can't use them.
concrete, you have to